This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so we will start now. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Twin Politics Ocean Seminar. New friends, old friends, I'm very happy to see this gathering happening again on another typical Wednesday afternoon. And I will start today's session on time, as we always do. And I'm the moderator today. My name is Wen, and I'm a PhD researcher at the Twin Politics Research Group. And also the organizer of the Ocean Seminar. Usually the moderator is Professor Alice Matrot, the principal investigator of the Twin Politics, but sadly she couldn't join us today because she's on her annual leave. So I will take over, and she also asked me to send her warm greetings to everyone in the room, and especially our guest speaker, Paulan, who I will introduce later. So, So this is already the third session of our Ocean Seminar. We had the first two sessions. We invited Nicholas Dagobas from the European Commission, who introduced us the initiative of the European Union Digital Twin of Ocean. And then we had Alain Arnaud, the head of Digital Ocean Program from Mercator Ocean International, who explained the ongoing construction of the EU DTO. So thanks to the two practitioners, we had a very good overview of this technology and its ongoing development. And today we are very excited to have Paulan Korenhof, our guest speaker, on board, who will bring us a more critical and also philosophical perspective to this technology. And please allow me to introduce Paulan. Paulan Korenhof is an assistant professor at the Environmental Policy Chair Group at the Wageningen University and Research in the Netherlands. And she has an interdisciplinary background in philosophy of technology, law, and art. And her research focuses on the intersection of digital technology and sustainability, and in particular on studying how the material design of complex technological systems like digital twins and artificial intelligence applications affect problem framing and potential intervention choices in the environmental governance of climate change and biodiversity challenges. Additionally, she also works on principles for the design, implementation, and use of green digital technology. And her presentation will be around steering representation towards a critical understanding of digital twins in environmental governance. So without further ado, I will give the floor to Paulan. Paulan, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Rowan. So that was a great introduction. And I think I can already skip at least one of my slides. So now it's a bit of the challenge of getting the screen working in one go. So let's see. I'm very sorry, the cat is throwing a glass down. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so perfect. Thank you everyone for being here. It's my pleasure to be invited. As Rowan said, I'm Paulan Korenhof, and today I will present a bit about my work on digital twins in environmental governance, and especially how I try to trace the human that is in the digital twin. So I'm gonna skip a bit on my background because I think you already introduced me quite well. To give a bit of a context, I got a background in philosophy of technology, and in particular from that point of view, I focus on the politics, power relations, materialities, and narratives that are often involved in information production processes and infrastructures. And I'm especially interested always in how the medium and the way we narrate and foresee the medium actually in the end affect the message. I work on digital twins research from roughly 2020 onwards, and in the next next 20 or so minutes, I'm trying to give you a bit of a bird view what I'm doing. I will not go too deeply in all kinds of philosophical theories and concepts because I find it more useful to try to share the overall message. So we're currently in a polycrisis of climate change, waste, pollution, extreme weather, hunger, and biodiversity loss. And these all pose incredibly complex challenges for environmental governance. As we try to deal with these complex questions, many have now turned their hopes on the concept of digital twins. And when doing so, we have a digital twin, so a mediated representation that aims to, in a sense, replicate processes of the real world in a digital version in the middle between us and the thing we want to govern as a tool for help. So giving two examples, I forgot about it. But so overall, when we look at the digital twins in environmental governance, the main use is focused on monitoring, on predicting, on giving recommendations, and for instance, by means of scenario testing and what-if scenarios. And in more far-going cases, in some cases, digital twins are being developed to even automatically intervene in certain processes. In this context, you can think about stopping, so a digital twin of bird flight, of flock birds flying. A colleague of mine is researching this, and then stopping an automatic windmill when certain flocks of birds get close to the windmill. Giving some concrete examples, digital twins are often, so I'm looking less at the ocean and more at other digital twins, so I thought it might be nice to highlight. Digital twin of cities are currently really popular. So this is a digital twin of the city of Utrecht, developed by the municipality. It's an idea of being a kind of a 3D map where buildings can be added and removed. And it should help citizens in exploring the implications of different kind of changes, like for instance, placing a tree, removing a tree to get a sense of the heat stress and solar panel implications. Another digital twin that I'm very interested in, and digital twin part of the ocean is often a subset of this, is the European Commission project Destination Earth, where they try to combine multiple digital twins, but currently mostly digital twins focused on extreme weather to, in the end, get an as good as possible view of the implications of climate change of the planet Earth. So just to quote us a bit, the idea is really to unlock the potential of digital modeling by visualization, analysis, prediction, and modeling. And as they stated, I will come back to this a bit later, is they, quote, want to utilize high performance computing, machine learning, and satellite data. The digital twins of Destination Earth will provide us with an accurate representation of the past, present, and future changes of our world. So in my work, I critically look at these digital twins, and the idea of my work is not to burn it down, but be constructive and give people a mirror also to reflect on how they frame the technology, how they design and conceptualize technology, and how users may potentially see it. First of all, why I find this so relevant is because if we have this digital twin in the middle of our governance, it will take a very prominent position in governance processes, and in itself helps to steer governance. And I come to that bit now with two follow-up slides. So commonly digital twins are conceptualized as a highly accurate, as we saw on the previous slide, and often even framed as a realistic digital model or a set of models that mirrors a specific physical twin as it changes and offers actionable information by means of predictions and simulations. So what I added here is an image of Destination Earth that's used to show a bit what the idea of underpinning digital twin is. So let's say the conceptualization, the idea is that you have a virtual space, a digital twin that mirrors the real space, and based on data, the virtual space is consistently updated, while at the same time, this virtual space is used for information processes, giving actionable information to change the physical twin. So this also looks like it's conceptualized as a realistic representation, a replica that's mirrored. So it has really the suggestion of objectivity, of being realistic, And what we don't see here in these kinds of images and in this conceptualization are the implications of this kind of framing and use. And mainly what it boils down to, what is missing here is actually the human being in the process. So in part of my work, I propose to reconceptualize digital twins, and I have a lot of different words for this, but I find in the end maps the easiest. They're kind of, I see them in the way they are used in practice and the role they aim to fulfill, maps for navigating future change. So if we, for instance, imagine a digital twin of a sheep, we then have a digital sheep that we use data input to update the sheep. And then we have this kind of these knobs that we can try to push to figure out whether we want to have future A, B, or C. And then the digital replica gives us feedback on what we need to do. Do we need to feed it? Do we need to give it medicine? Do we need to shave it? And in this sense, digital twin simulations form as a kind of navigational map to figuring out what we need to do in order to get to certain kind of futures. So in this sense, digital twins guide decisions and automated processes, and they give insight to the influence of diverse factors. They help finding problems before they occur, and they are used for scenario testing. So these are the kind of promises for digital twins and showing the possible futures. But as such, we use a digital representation as a map to guide us to certain futures. And for me, as someone who's always really interested in how representations are made, this raises, of course, a lot of questions because representations are not the real world. So if we think a bit about just any kind of representation, a representation is always fundamentally different from that which it represents. For instance, we cannot swim in a digital version of an ocean, and we cannot eat a digital apple. And if we blindly follow digital representations, as some of you may experience with following their GPS, you may end up in a place where you don't want to be. And why? That is because representations are always made. The map is not a territory, but it's a made construct that helps us. And in its difference it is useful, because if the map would be the territory, we would have to drag the world around or the street around to find our way in it. So it makes use, but it also, of course, has some limitations. And part of my work is then trying to figure out how is this map made. So in this sense, I approach digital twins also not just as programs, but as large infrastructures, as assemblies of different components composing of data centers. Different kind of sensors are involved. A lot of digital twin development relies on the availability of money and time. There are resources going in there. It's plugged in somewhere. Some particular person is using it in a certain use context where it's embedded in a certain locality, culture, and values. Sometimes it's connected to the Internet of Things, so there are connectivity questions. So overall, it's a very large infrastructure, and especially with these large programs like Destination Earth, these infrastructures are massive. And then the question that I'm interested in is, how does this in the end affect our governance? Where does it come from? And more particularly, how does the human that shapes and makes this decision of this process in the end affect the representation, and then in turn, by shaping the representation, the governance that follows from it. So making it a bit more concrete, tracing the human in the system. So if we only have, let's imagine, orange and blue Lego blocks, we can only build an orange and blue representation of the world. And given that we're working with data in a digital context, we have limitations and things that are more easy to get. So data is often is quantified. It's relatively easy to get, for instance, data on on measurements on distances, but it can be, for instance, way more difficult. Say you want to know how people experience living next to a freeway, not based on pollution particles in the air, but based on the smell. So getting a sense of how humans experience it will be difficult to get in a system. So it's always a certain representation in there, depends on choices with regard to data collection, on how we program the models, what's in the models, what the models can offer, and what in the end then follows for the digital representation. I'm just going to sneak how I'm doing on time. I'm doing fine. So what really interests me here is how the digital twin design actually shapes the boundaries of the map that we use to navigate these future changes. What falls in it, what falls out of it, how do we see things in there, and also what are the big blind spots that we need to worry about. And an extra reason why I think this is really important is because with a digital twin, if we use it for environmental governance, you are, in a sense, run a risk of getting locked in a certain representation. Because if the representation guides your governance, then the boundaries of the representation and the options and the futures that are, in a sense, embedded in these representations shape your potential for governance. So what I therefore really want to underline is that in all cases, digital twins can be useful, but it's very important to keep in mind that they're made, they're representations, and they always entail a certain focus of an entity or a selection of a particular entity. And this is, in a sense, already a political choice that's materialized in data and parameters selection, because these choices, in the end, shape part of the governance choice making and processes. Another thing I think is really important to consider in this context is that the choice to make a digital twin of something kind of reveals already in itself a problem perception, because the physical twin is seen as problem. It's seen as something that needs to be improved, controlled, or changed. So what your choice is to twin is in also a value-laden choice. Another layer of the digital twin representation that I might be a bit redundant to point out, but it's really focused on data and datafication. So that's a particular type of knowledge productions based on quantification. And also in here, we can raise questions about the knowledge politics of digital twins. For instance, there are different types of knowledge, various forms of indigenous knowledge. So far in the digital twins I've explored, I haven't seen despite digital twins trying to be interdisciplinary, haven't seen a big degree of interdisciplinarity or let alone transdisciplinarity covered in these digital twins. Another point to point out, I think, is that a digital twin necessarily, if we want to build a digital twin, it relies on an ideal framing of what constitutes the good physical twin and what values are central to this. So, for example, in the case of the oceans that people are the digital twins of the oceans that your research group is researching, in order to select what we want to make in digital twin, what parameters are relevant, that reflects an idea of what the ocean is and should be. So there is an ideal there, because if we want to improve something or maintain something or conserve something or change something, we need to know where we want its end goal or what trajectory we want it to develop. And that already implies that in the selection of parameters, there are value-laden choices of what is relevant for an ideal physical twin. So trying to make it a bit more concrete, I'd like to take you a bit on a more hypothetical exploration of the human in the system. So there are several points where the human plays a role. It's on the problem perception. What is the problem that the digital twin should address? What kind of goals should it serve, and who should it serve for these goals? So think about, should it improve efficiency? Should it reduce pollution? So what do we want to achieve with the digital twin? Another element that plays a role are the norms. These can be scientific norms, but there can also be privacy norms or legislation that digital twins take into account when we're building the system. So for some data collection, some data use might be limited to, for instance, the General Data Protection Regulation. Also, these influence what in the end can be represented in a digital twin and what not. Another one is the visions about the future. So that connects about the ideal framing. There's an idea of what we want to achieve, where we want to go when building the digital twin. What do we want to achieve? Do we want to prevent cities from being damaged? Do we want to save lives? Do we want to safeguard biodiversity? Do we want to increase production? So these are different visions about the future that can shape how a digital twin will look like. And last but definitely not least, which shapes the digital twin and in a sense also contains particular value-laden choices, are the expectations about users. Do we expect to be these people from the policy field, or do we expect this to be scientists or laymen? And also these expectations are quite a shaping role for digital twins, and also give them a particular view on how they relate to reality, because you need a representation to be shaped in such a way that it can be understandable for certain groups of people. So this will always contain an extra translation layer from the initial translation. So to build a digital twin, you're building, in a sense, translation upon translation. So first you need to translate the real world into a digital version. And then for this digital version, you then need to translate this into an interface, how it should be perceived by particular groups of users. So delving a tiny bit more in the problem perception, let's take this hypothetical case. Say the problem perception, the rough problem perception is that car emissions are a challenge for sustainability. So let's say the first person that is asked to think about digital twins in this context to play a role says, okay, so cars need to be more efficient, and building a digital twin of the car, working on the efficiency. And these are confined social changes because we still use the cars. It's just the car are a bit more efficient. However, another way to think about if you want to consider digital twins, and that's the question if we can consider digital twins for this, is if your problem perception of car emissions is that we travel too far and too much, or that we need other means of transport, you're looking at building replicas of completely different aspects of the world. And you will be looking at how people can change their behavior with regard to transport, or what alternatives are optional. And these are large transformations. And especially with regard to these kind of large transformations, I have some concerns with regard to digital twin use, and in particular use for governance. Because for efficiency, I see the use of digital twins seems kind of at least contextualized and clear. But the question is, if the choices in the development always shape the boundaries of the potential futures digital twins can offer, then the question is, can digital twins really help us think out of the box on how to deal with wicked sustainability issues? Because in some cases we need to think out of the box, but if we think of a replica setting where the boundaries are fixed by what we already know, the question is if the principle of digital twins, if it would be incorporated in many aspects of governance, wouldn't hamper instead of help sustainability transformations, because it restricts us to the boundaries of its own initial setting. And just have a check on time. Oh, I'm doing fine. This brings me to another part, and the last part to consider about digital twins. I think we shouldn't only consider digital twins and think about them from what they're doing and what they could offer, but I think we should also look at digital twins from outside the box and ask the question, should we actually build a digital twin or shouldn't we? So digital twins, and depending on the kind of digital twins, but as said, the Destination Earth project, I find it immensely interesting project, but its resource use at this stage seems quite large. So the idea is, and I got this from the website of Destination Earth, the idea is at this stage that it will be using several supercomputers in Europe. So running this digital twin on supercomputers will require, well, first of all, a lot of hardware, a lot of energy, a lot of water use. And then the question is this use, the cost of this massive amount of resources used proportional to what this digital twin will offer us for sustainability? Because maybe it will indeed help us improve sustainability, but then the question is, at what environmental cost? So another point that I like to raise with regard on building digital twins, and also coming back on different people that play a role in it, in its development, is how do we balance the different costs and the different involved people in these buildings, and why will we build a digital twin? What is a proportional context? When, how, who will be involved, and under what conditions? Because I think balancing these different things to figure out when to really use them and when not is also a critical question to consider. So coming to the conclusion, there are problems with digital twins, and I don't want to say that they can never be solved and addressed, but I think they're relevant to consider to figure out what proper digital twin use is. And first of all, I really highly recommend, I still see some things happening, to refrain from addressing them as realistic copies. I still sometimes see it on websites. They're always in interpretation. They're always built on certain values and worldviews. But this is also what makes them usable. If we think about the map metaphor, if a map doesn't show any better roads for cars or cyclists or ships, but it will be equal for everyone, if it would just be, let's say, a one-on-one realistic reflection of the planet, it would absolutely lose its use. So it's good that there are values and worldviews built into there, but it's also more important to be aware of them. Because they help steer governments, they are productive of new power relations. That is also something that we need to consider when looking at digital twins. And they bring along new shifts in tasks and responsibilities. So, for instance, if take the case of the municipality in Utrecht, a lot of choices are built based on the 3D model of the city. And if all the subsidized processes are entangled with it, then you get kind of the risk of a vendor lock-in. The data school in Utrecht does really interesting research on this. So there's this risk on being dependent on software for governance processes. So that's also something to take into account. They potentially draw up new goals and resources. Especially the data economy plays a role here. It's also something that we see with the Destination Earth project, that it's being developed under the Green Deal as well as the digital strategy, so under the twin transition, and is thus expected also to not only help with environmental governance, but also to boost Europe's digital agenda and agile economy. And last but not definitely least, it affects our practices and resource use, and especially given again from the environmental governance context, the research use of digital twins is incredibly important to consider, because this may in some cases not be proportional to its goal. So summarizing, digital twins are neither neutral nor mere representations, and this is precisely what can be easily obscured by the framing of digital twin as a replica. So thank you very much. I'm trying to find the right, there we go. Stop sharing, yes.
Thank you very much, Paulan, for your wonderful presentation. And indeed, I think this perspective, like a more critical and reflective perspective, is very much needed in the current discussion of digital twin. There are a lot of technical development, but I think without questioning those critical questions, we cannot have a, let's say, equitable digital twin. And this is also one of the major topics that we are currently researching within our research team. Thank you for your presentation. And now we will open the floor for the audience. So if you have any questions, please feel free to open your microphone and also turn on your camera. But if you don't feel comfortable enough or you don't feel convenient, you can also post it in the chat. I will read it for you. But one of the main objectives of our Ocean seminar is to create an open community where everyone can speak freely and also connect with each other. So we do encourage everybody to present themselves and introduce themselves. The floor is yours if you have any questions.
Sorry.
I see Florian Steig. You have the floor.
Well, thank you so much. My name is Florian Steig. I'm a PhD student in geography at the Uni of Oxford. And I would like to know, how does one research the digital, or what kind of methods can we use to kind of systematically analyze the effects of digital representations of the environment? Because I think that there is a lot of truth in this, and it's important to look at this, but I haven't really figured out how to look at this. Like, should we do field work? Can we see the digital as a field, or how does one approach this?
Thank you, Florian. So that is an excellent question, and I'm discussing this sometimes with quite some people, and I'm actually trying to collaborate with people. So if anyone wants to work on a more structured methodology to research this, so for what I'm generally doing and what I'm doing with colleagues, and I draw there actually from my background in the Art Academy, in unpacking representations. One thing that I use is from the user side, looking at it visually, and then trying to really use critical hermeneutics to interpret the interface. I hope it doesn't sound too vague. So for instance, when you see the color use like red and green, they signal all these different things. And of course, this is culturally binded, etc. But trying to be as while being aware of my own limitations, interpret what you see, what you can do. So try to trace the pathways in the interface. So it's kind of an autoethnography that you're trying to perform with the digital as a user, but from a kind of critical hermeneutics, and in a sense perform a visual, I'd almost say discourse analysis on what you're seeing and doing. So that is one part. The other part is interviewing developers and asking them, what choices did you make? What are your restrictions? So I did that for an article, and that was really insightful because some of the key findings I learned was that much of the decisions are made are shaped by time and money, quite more than you expect. And the other hand was that, and maybe I was a bit optimistic and naive, I guess, but a lot of decisions were shaped by the availability to technology, to the extent that they just started to gather data and the technology was there. So figuring out whether it's useful afterwards. So it's not even a problem thinking afterwards, just we get, so in a sense, then part of the digital twins is really framed under conditions like time, money, and the technology that's there. In this sense, I highly recommend, but I haven't got around to it yet to do that properly, would be infrastructure analysis. That would definitely be a good approach. What I am mostly trying to aim at and bringing it together is relying on a form of assembly theory. So treating them as heterogeneous assemblages. I mainly rely on Delanda because he's a more readable version of Deleuze and Guattari, and it's the question to what extent this really is not also Deleuze and Guattari. Some people say it's another version. Cy Tuffel, by the way, also has excellent work on unpacking digital technology as assemblages, and that's when you really start to trace all the different elements. That's a bit what I did in the image. That's not of a particular one. It's based on an earlier article. So those are roughly the methodologies, but I would say to get the full picture, definitely get mixed methods. And I don't believe any one person can do this, especially not with the large ones. So I also would really, so if anyone also here is interested in cooperation in the future, I really prefer collaboration, because I think you need I am a triple interdisciplinary, but I have by far not enough knowledge to do this properly. So you need mixed disciplines and mixed views, ideally, to get the full picture. Sorry, that was a really extensive answer, but this really keeps me busy quite a lot.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, I see Felix.
Hello, I'm Felix. I'm also from the Twin Politics project. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was very interesting, and also great graphics on the presentation, very pretty. But my question concerns a bit the sort of relationship between digital twins and science or scientific knowledge. If there is like a fundamental difference between now digital twins and scientific knowledge, because I would say some of the problems are a bit similar, like digital twins are sort of presented as being neutral, as being representations. The same is the case with like a positive positivist understanding of science, that you have an unmediated access to sort of the natural world. So yeah, I just wonder about that, if you would say that there is like now through this twin aspect something fundamentally new, or if it's kind of the same issue still.
I'd say yes and no. So you're absolutely correct that it has a lot of parallels with the discussions on science. I think science and the discussions of science are a part of the digital twins, but I don't think you can reduce the digital twins fully to science because, okay, of course, science also has infrastructures, etc. But as these being developed as technological tools to be used, so as programs with interfaces, they're more than just science. So a colleague of mine calls me emergent phenomena. They're brought together by different elements. In there you can also already see, of course, parts of the discussions on modeling, but I never in science, but I don't think the discussions on science per se always go into the same detail of the user side of a technology. So there are resemblance, but I would recommend combining, let's say, critical perspectives or philosophy of science combined with philosophy of technology to get the parts together. So the question, are they fundamentally new? I also like to answer that in a bit of a different way. I think digital twins show a lot of, resonate really strongly with cybernetic thinking by building engagement and control in a consistent feedback loop based on the most adequate amount of information you can get. So I also don't think digital twins in any form in that sense conceptually thinking are new. What makes it new are the current technical developments that make a lot of things possible and shape a lot of things in ways that were not earlier the case. So, for instance, the role of big tech, large server parks in digital twins, dependencies on large companies. That is, I think, in digital twins as this assemblage of different elements with different actors, something that makes it quite different from technologies or how do you say it, knowledge production elements that are developed purely in a university context, in a container, and also that makes it a bit different from only just a conceptual approach of what it can do in governance context. Does it make sense?
Yep, thank you.
Any questions from the audience?
Yeah, I would have a question as well.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. It was wonderful. I'm also from the Twin Politics team. My question would be, if I were to develop a digital twin myself, what would be some sort of best practices that I could follow? How should I attack this if I'm not just going and collecting whatever data I can find and using the technologies I have at hand?
I'm going to give a super annoying answer. Sorry. That would be, what would your problem be? So I would also always recommend to think from the problem and what tools or what way would you address this. So I know this is the absolute opposite of what the European Commission is now doing with their Horizon goals, asking people to develop generative AI for specific goals. I think that's the wrong way of thinking. I think the first question is always, what is the problem and what do we need to solve it? And if then your answer is we need a digital twin, then best practices, that's a really good one. Then I would start with so that so much depends on the case. It's a really difficult question. I would try to reflect on I would try to frame it as a map and trying to be really aware what the boundaries of the map are. Trying what kind of data do you need and treat it like you're building a map with an agenda for who can using it and what kind of goals can you reach. So that's why I find the map metaphor here really useful, because it shows kind of the questions you're making, but it shows also the implications of the questions for users. Does that make a tiny bit of sense? But if you're ever up for developing principles for how to build a digital twin, I'm all ears.
Thank you.
I see Lorena, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Paulan, for the presentation. It was very interesting. I don't know if it's necessarily a question, but I really liked your remarks on the fact that for example, we have the challenge of how not to overuse resources when creating a digital twin. But at the same time, I like your example on the use of cars for riding long distances. And then I had in mind a current issue on the ocean economy of improving energy efficiency in the ship sector, in vessels, either for fishing or for other activities. So my question was a bit more on how can we make sure that the creation or the development of digital twins is not only oriented to improve production or improve productive efficiency, because I think that we are leaving behind the real or the original maybe idea of reduction of emissions and improve sustainability. And if we go entirely into the fact that we should not waste a lot of resources in developing these digital twins, I believe that the private sector and the industry at the end will take advantage of all this and will develop this kind of digital twins only for productivity gains. So I would like to listen a bit your views on that. Thank you.
It feels almost like how you're asking me, how can we stop the capitalist machine, to which I wish I would have the answer, but yes, so that's a really challenging part, and I also see the risks on other levels with it, because the more I'm assuming most of you are familiar with the Jevons paradox, that if we change efficiency, we risk in only using more. I'm gonna be sad to say I have no answer. The upside with the digital twin is if corporations build it for efficiency, it uses resources indeed, but it doesn't reduce the option to look at other options because they build it for their own use. What would bother me, and that would be, I think, mostly a democratic question also, how can we ensure democratic legitimacy if these tools are used, is if they are used for governance, and in the governance what if scenarios there are only efficiency choices, how do we stop that? That is why I would think that eventually, well, I'm kind of hoping the Ocean Twin Research Group is gonna do that, maybe some beginning of that, to find a way how to ensure that digital twins, when used for governance, are democratically legitimated. If they're what are the conditions, what are needed, what needs to be built in there, what are the transparency demands. I've been thinking about it, but we need more brains on this. It's also why I invite as much people as possible to start working on researching digital twins, because we need all the help we can get to make sure that it goes in the wrong direction. So I don't want to say this is an evil technology, but it is one that definitely needs good guidance about people who look wider than efficiency and optimization. Sorry, there's a half answer, but
very interesting. Thank you very much.
Any further questions? So while the audience is brainstorming, I myself actually have some questions. I think you did most of the research on the digital twin in environmental governance. Yeah. And within our research group, we are also doing research on the digital twin of ocean, which is also environmental digital twin. But in your research, I want to understand what is the special considerations we have for the environmental focused digital twin. Because I think digital twin technology as a technology, it also applies in different sectors, like in industry. And I want to understand what is the special things around this kind of environmental digital twin and what kind of special considerations we need to give to them.
Yeah, so one of them is most of the environmental context is a much more dynamic, flexible context than the use of digital twins in a factory setting. So for a digital twin of an airplane or for a water system. Mm-hmm. The other one is that the stakes are way higher because they're about the world we live in. So many of the more industrialized digital twins, when they make an error, maybe we get a few wrong cars. But if we make an error with a digital twin in, let's say pollution or whatever, the environmental results can be far larger. I don't want to say that all the factory digital twins. So there are different stakes there. And also what I think is really fascinating, but that's really, we get into a philosophical question of the difference of representing an artificial environment, so representing a human-built environment by a human-built construct, is on a level very. It has similarities, but doing the same with a natural phenomena. There are so much more layers of complexity there, and maybe this is just a feeling of value or something that's going on with me here. I don't really have to pinpoint it, but it is a different scope and scale, different impact for people. But I also have the idea that it is a different value level. I hope most of us do value a car differently than a forest. Maybe a lot of people don't, but for me that there will be definitely a difference.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. I see. Yeah. Thank you, Lorena, for your feedback. And so we are ahead of the schedule. I also want to take this opportunity to share with everyone our next session. So I'm going to share my slide again. So can you see my screen? Okay. So thank you, Paulan, again for your presentation, and thank you everyone for joining us today. So for our next session, we will have Elizabeth Halves from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and she will introduce us about a database that they currently develop on the Ocean Data Science Initiative and its implications for the ocean governance. And we will also launch our YouTube channel soon. So we will upload all the ocean seminars recordings to the YouTube channel. And currently, if you want to see all the recordings, you can also find it on our website. But in the later stage, we will have it. We will move it to the YouTube channel. And lastly, I also want to take this opportunity to share with you one side event that we co-organize with the EMBRIC, the European Marine Biological Resource Center, in the upcoming UN Ocean Conference in Nice. Is an on-site event also about the digital twin of ocean and its ethical and political implications for the global marine governance. And we already have a finalized program where you can see we invited 5 panelists, Pascal Lamy, the Vice President of the Paris Peace Forum, and also 3 delegates representing Brazil, the Alliance of Small Island States, and also Colombia. So we have a bit of more balanced voice from Global South. And we also have Nicolas Pader, the Executive Director of EMBRIC, and Alice will moderate the event. It will take place at 6 p.m. on 12th June. So if you're interested, please register. This is the QR code. It will be a 75 minutes of panel discussion, and followed by a reception where you have a more informal environment to exchange your opinions, and is outside of the conference zone, but we will arrange the shuttle bus. So the registration is necessary. You can request for shuttle bus in the process. And yeah, so I will stop here for 10 seconds so that you can scan the QR code if you're interested.
So it will not be put online?
Sadly, no, it's an on-site event.
It looks absolutely exciting.
Yeah, we will update you as well, Paulan. Yeah.
I'd love to stay in touch.
And so thank you again for joining today. If you want to know more about our project, you can visit our website and also follow us on Blue Sky. And if you have any questions on our project, please contact Alice Vatrot. And for Ocean Seminar, you're always welcome to email me. Yeah. So I wish everybody a pleasant Wednesday evening, and I will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for putting this together.
Thank you, Paulan.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.